The woman who heard the universe whispered Dr. Maya Chen sat alone in the observation deck of the Meridian Deep Space Observatory, her fingers dancing across holographic displays, while the red glow of Mars painted everything around her in shades of rust and shadow. The massive telescope array stretched out beyond the reinforced windows, each dish pointed toward different sectors of space, listening for signals that most of her colleagues believed would never come. But Maya had been hearing something for months now, something that made her heart race, and her mind work in ways that felt both familiar and completely alien. The quantum frequency detector hummed softly beside her, its screen showing wave patterns that looked like music written in mathematics. Most scientists would see random noise, cosmic background radiation, or equipment glitches. Maya saw something else entirely. She saw patterns within patterns, mathematical sequences that seemed to pulse with intention, as if the universe itself was trying to solve an equation. Still chasing ghosts, Chen. Dr. Marcus Webb's voice cut through her concentration like a blade. The head of the observatory stood in the doorway, his expression mixing concern with barely concealed frustration. The review board is meeting tomorrow. They want to know why you've been tying up our most sensitive equipment for 3 months with no publishable results. Maya didn't turn around. Her eyes remained fixed on the display where a new sequence was forming, more complex than anything she had seen before. They're not ghosts, Marcus. Look at this pattern. It's not random. It's following a mathematical progression based on prime numbers, but twisted through dimensional mathematics I've never seen before. Webb walked closer, squinting at the screen. Maya, that's interference from the solar wind interacting with our receivers. We've been over this. The patterns you think you're seeing are just your brain trying to make sense of chaos. It's pareidolia, like seeing faces in clouds. No. Maya's voice was quiet but firm. She pulled up another display showing weeks of data compiled into a single visualization. This isn't random. Watch what happens when I overlay the sequences from different time periods. The holographic display shifted, showing dozens of signal patterns layered on top of each other. For a moment, Webb saw it too. The patterns weren't just similar, they were evolving, becoming more complex over time. Each sequence built on the last, like a conversation where one side was learning to speak more clearly. This is impossible, Webb whispered. You're suggesting these signals are communicating. Maya finally turned to face him, her dark eyes bright with excitement and exhaustion. Not just communicating, they're teaching. Each transmission includes the mathematical framework for understanding the next one. It's like someone is showing me how to read their language, by starting with concepts I already know and building up to ideas that are completely alien. Webb shook his head slowly. Maya, do you hear what you're saying? You're talking about first contact with an alien intelligence. If this were real, every government on Earth would be involved. The implications would be ... terrifying. Maya finished. Yes, they would be. That's why I haven't reported it yet. I need to understand what they're trying to tell me first. The quantum detector suddenly erupted in a cascade of new signals, more complex and rapid than anything Maya had recorded before. The mathematical patterns flowed across the screen like living things, forming shapes that seemed to move in dimensions that didn't quite exist in normal space. Maya's hands flew across the controls, trying to record and analyze the transmission in real time. It's responding, she breathed. It knows we're listening. Webb stepped back, his face pale. Maya, shut it down. Whatever this is, we need to involve the authorities. This is way beyond our clearance level. But Maya was already working, her fingers inputting mathematical sequences of her own. She had been preparing for this moment for weeks, developing a response protocol based on human mathematical concepts. She sent a simple sequence, the Fibonacci progression, then pi to 50 decimal places, then a basic proof of the Pythagorean theorem. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The alien transmission exploded into a symphony of mathematical concepts that made Maya's head spin. She saw equations that described the curvature of space-time in ways that Einstein had never imagined. Geometric proofs that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the human mind could process, and underlying it all, a sense of desperate urgency. "They're not just communicating," Maya whispered, tears streaming down her face as she tried to process what she was seeing. "They're warning us. There's something coming, something that destroys civilizations that can't think in pure mathematical abstractions, and they've been searching for a species that can help them fight it." The transmission suddenly cut off, leaving the observatory in eerie silence. Maya stared at the empty screen, her mind reeling from what she had just experienced. The mathematical concepts she had glimpsed were beyond anything in human science. Yet somehow she had understood them, at least partially. Webb's voice was barely a whisper. "Maya, what have you done?" Before she could answer, every alarm in the observatory began blaring. The emergency lights bathed the room in red, and the automated voice of the facility's AI announced, "Unknown energy signatures detected in the outer solar system. All personnel report to emergency stations immediately." Maya looked at the quantum detector one more time. The screen was dark, but she could feel something had changed. The signals hadn't stopped, they had just moved to a different frequency, one that her equipment couldn't detect but that she could somehow sense in her bones. "I've made contact," she said simply, "and I think they're coming." Captain Elena Torres burst into the observatory 20 minutes later, flanked by Earth Defense Force personnel in full combat gear. Her dark uniform bore the insignia of the Solar Defense Command, and her expression was grim. "Dr. Chen, you need to come with us immediately. We've got ships appearing throughout the solar system, and our analysts tell us the energy signatures match the frequencies you've been monitoring." Maya stood slowly, her legs unsteady after hours of intense concentration. "How many ships?" "Dozens, maybe hundreds. They're not showing up on visual scanners, but they're definitely there. Our gravity detectors are going crazy, and the electromagnetic interference is disrupting communications across 3 planets." Webb stepped forward, his voice shaking. "Captain, Dr. Chen believes she's been in communication with these ... entities. She thinks they're trying to warn us about something." Torres turned her sharp gaze on Maya. "Is that true?" Maya nodded. "They're not invaders, they're refugees. There's something else out there, something that destroys civilizations. These beings have been searching for allies, for species that can think in ways that can counter this threat. And you believe humans qualify. I know we do. The mathematical concepts they shared with me, the way they responded to our number systems. We think differently than they do. Our mathematics is creative, intuitive. We make leaps of logic that more advanced species might not consider. That's what they need." Torres was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. "Dr. Chen, I'm going to need you to come with us to the command center. If these beings are friendly, we need to establish proper communication. If they're not, ... they are," Maya interrupted. "I've been talking to them for months. They're afraid, Captain. They're running from something, and they think we might be the key to stopping it. The quantum detector suddenly flickered back to life, displaying a new message. This one was different from the others, simpler, more direct. It was a mathematical representation of the solar system, with Earth highlighted and a series of numbers that Maya immediately recognized as coordinates. "They want to meet," she said, her voice filled with wonder and terror. "They're asking for permission to approach Earth." Torres looked at the display, then at Maya. "Dr. Chen, you're about to become the most important person in human history. Are you ready for that?" Maya thought about the mathematical conversations she had been having, the glimpses of alien intelligence that had both terrified and inspired her. She thought about the warning hidden in their communications, the threat that was apparently heading toward not just Earth, but toward civilizations across the galaxy. "No," she said honestly, "I'm not ready. But I'm the only one who can understand them right now, so I guess I'll have to be." Torres nodded grimly. "Then let's go make history." As they left the observatory, Maya looked back at the quantum detector one more time. The screen showed a countdown timer, but not in human numerals. The alien mathematics were counting down to something, and Maya had a feeling that when it reached 0, everything would change forever. The red sky of Mars stretched overhead, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, Maya could feel them waiting. The beings who had been searching for allies, who had found in humanity something they had never encountered before. A species that could think in mathematical poetry instead of just mathematical logic. And in the depths of space, something else was moving. Something that the refugees feared. Something that had been following them across the galaxy. Maya didn't know what it was yet, but she could feel it in the mathematical patterns, like a discordant note in a perfect symphony. The countdown continued, and Maya realized that humanity's greatest test was about to begin. Part 2, when mathematics became humanity's greatest weapon. The command center of the Solar Defense Station orbited Earth like a mechanical moon, its massive structure bristling with communications arrays and defensive weaponry that had never been tested against anything more threatening than space debris. Maya stood before the main holographic display, her hands trembling as she worked to establish clearer communication with the alien vessels that had appeared throughout the solar system, like ghosts made of mathematics and starlight. Captain Torres stood beside her, along with Professor Williams, Maya's former mentor who had been rushed up from Earth when the crisis began. The elderly man's face was pale but determined as he watched his former student work with concepts that challenged everything he thought he knew about physics and communication. "The patterns are stabilizing," Maya reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what was happening. "They're adjusting their transmission methods to match our equipment. I think they're learning how to communicate more effectively with us." The holographic display suddenly shifted, and for the first time, the alien signals formed something that looked almost like writing. Mathematical symbols arranged in patterns that seemed to pulse with meaning, creating sentences made of equations and paragraphs built from geometric proofs. "Can you read it?" Torres asked. Maya nodded slowly, her mind working to parse the mathematical language. "They're identifying themselves. They call themselves the Kethany, and they're the last survivors of a vast civilization that spanned multiple galaxies. They've been running for thousands of years from something they call the Professor Williams leaned forward. "Devourers, what are they?" Maya's hands flew across the controls, requesting more information. The response came quickly, filling the display with mathematical representations that made her stomach turn. They're not alive in any way we understand. They're mathematical constructs that exist in the spaces between dimensions. They consume the mathematical foundations of reality itself, turning ordered universes into chaos. That's impossible, Williams whispered. Mathematics isn't something that can be consumed. Apparently it can, Maya replied grimly. The Cathani have been searching for allies, for species that can think in mathematical abstractions complex enough to fight these things. Most civilizations develop along predictable mathematical lines, but humans, were different. The display shifted again, showing a representation of human mathematical development compared to other species. Maya stared at it in amazement. We're chaotic. Our mathematics is intuitive, creative. We make leaps of logic that more advanced species never consider. We see patterns where others see only noise, and we create mathematical art instead of just mathematical tools. Torres stepped closer. And that makes us useful. It makes us weapons, Maya said quietly. The Devourers can predict and counter. Logical mathematical attacks, but they can't counter creative ones. They can't understand mathematics that breaks their own rules. A new alarm sounded, and the display flashed red. Commander Blake, the station's military liaison, burst into the command center. We've got a problem. Our long-range sensors are picking up massive distortions in space-time at the edge of the solar system. Whatever these Devourers are, they've found us. Maya turned back to the alien communication system, her fingers dancing across the controls as she sent an urgent message to the Cathani. The response was immediate and filled with mathematical concepts that spoke of desperation and determination. They're asking for our help, Maya translated. They want to teach us how to weaponize our mathematical thinking. They say that if we can learn to think in pure mathematical abstractions, we can create weapons that exist in the spaces between thoughts. Williams shook his head. Maya, that's beyond anything we've ever attempted. The human mind isn't designed to think in pure abstractions. Maybe not, Maya replied, but we're the only species they've found that can even attempt it. And if we don't try, both our civilizations will be destroyed. The main display suddenly exploded with new information as the Cathani began transmitting their knowledge directly to Maya's neural implants. The sensation was overwhelming, like trying to drink from a fire hose made of pure thought. Mathematical concepts flowed through her mind faster than she could process them, showing her ways of thinking that existed beyond normal human consciousness. She saw mathematics as a living thing, equations that could move and change and adapt. She saw geometric shapes that existed in dimensions that folded back on themselves, creating paradoxes that somehow made perfect sense. Most importantly, she saw how to use human intuition and creativity to bend these mathematical concepts into weapons. I can see it, she gasped, her eyes wide with wonder and terror. I can see how to fight them, but I can't do it alone. I need other minds, other ways of thinking. Torres immediately activated the station's communication array. This is Solar Defense Command to all Earth stations. We need every mathematician, physicist, and theoretical scientist available immediately. Emergency protocols are in effect. Within hours, the command center was filled with humanity's greatest minds. Dr. Sarah Kim, a quantum physicist from Seoul. Dr. Abdul Hassan, a theoretical mathematician from Cairo. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a computer scientist from New York who specialized in artificial intelligence. Dozens of others, all working together to understand the mathematical weapons that the Cathani were trying to teach them. Maya stood at the center of it all, her mind serving as a bridge between human and alien thinking. The Cathani had taught her to see mathematics as a language of reality itself, a way of describing not just what was, but what could be. Human creativity allowed them to imagine mathematical concepts that had never existed before, turning abstract thoughts into concrete weapons. "The Devourers are approaching," Commander Blake announced. "ETA 12 hours. Maya looked at the assembled scientists. "We need to create a mathematical defense grid, not made of metal or energy, but made of pure thought. We need to imagine equations that can exist in the spaces where the Devourers live, and we need to make those equations real." Dr. Kim stepped forward. "How do we make mathematics real?" "By believing in it," Maya replied. "By understanding that mathematics isn't just a tool for describing reality, it is reality. And if we can think in mathematical abstractions that are creative enough, chaotic enough, human enough, we can create a defense that the Devourers can't understand or counter." The next several hours were a blur of intense collaboration. Human scientists worked alongside Cathani mathematicians, their minds linked through quantum communication arrays that allowed them to share thoughts and concepts in real time. Maya found herself thinking in ways she had never imagined possible, seeing mathematical relationships that existed in the spaces between thoughts. They created weapons made of paradoxes, equations that solved themselves by creating new problems, geometric shapes that existed by not existing. It was mathematics that could only come from the human mind, chaotic and creative and completely unpredictable. When the Devourers finally arrived, they came not as ships or creatures, but as distortions in reality itself. Space-time twisted around them, and the mathematical foundations of physics began to collapse in their presence. Stars flickered out of existence, planets became mathematical impossibilities, and the very concept of distance became meaningless. But humanity was ready. Maya stood at the center of the mathematical defense grid, her mind linked to every scientist in the solar system and beyond. When she gave the command, thousands of human minds began thinking in perfect mathematical chaos, creating weapons that existed in the realm of pure thought. When it was over, the Devourers were gone, not destroyed but transformed. The chaotic mathematics that humanity had created had given them something they had never experienced, the ability to think creatively instead of just logically. Instead of consuming mathematical order, they began to create it, turning from destroyers into builders. Maya collapsed into her chair, her mind exhausted from the effort of thinking in mathematical abstractions for hours. Around her, the other scientists were similarly drained, but their faces showed the same expression of wonder and accomplishment. "Is it over?" Torres asked. Maya looked at the display, which now showed the transformed Devourers working alongside the Cathini to repair the mathematical damage they had caused across the galaxy. "It's over, and it's just beginning." Professor Williams approached her, his face filled with pride and amazement. "Maya, what we've done here, it's changed everything. We've shown that mathematics isn't just a tool, it's a way of thinking that can reshape reality itself." Maya nodded, still trying to process what they had accomplished. "The Cathini want to establish a permanent alliance. They want to teach us more about mathematical thinking, and they want to learn from our creativity. We're going to become the mathematical guardians of the galaxy." Torres smiled. "And to think, 6 months ago, people thought you were crazy for hearing voices in the static." Maya laughed, a sound filled with exhaustion and triumph. "I guess sometimes the universe really does whisper to those who know how to listen." As the command center slowly returned to normal operations, Maya looked out at the stars, knowing that humanity had just taken its first step into a larger universe. A universe where mathematics was magic, where creativity was the ultimate weapon, and where the human mind had proven itself to be the most powerful force in existence. The woman who had heard the universe whisper had become the voice that called down the stars themselves, and in doing so, had secured humanity's place as the mathematical guardians of all creation.